All right, everyone, what's going on? This is episode 8 of the Sell That SaaS podcast. I am your host, Will Padilla, and I am joined by a special guest. He looks fantastic if you already can't tell. He is the software cowboy, as he goes by on LinkedIn. Keegan, it is freaking great to have you. I've been following you on LinkedIn for quite some time and noticed that we're both in the Scottsdale area. Figured I'd shoot my shot, see if you get on the podcast. And if you guys can't tell, he has the cowboy hat, but he even has nicer cowboy boots and jeans. So he's the real deal. He is the real software cowboy, at least from what I could tell you guys. So Keegan, it's great to have you here.
No, I'm glad to be here. I was excited to find out that you were local as well, because you found me through LinkedIn. I found you through TikTok.
Yeah.
And I was like, no way, this guy's local. He's a SaaS AE. We're all about sharing tips and tricks and getting people more involved in the SaaS community. Let's do this.
Yeah, and like that's all what it's about. And with your experience, and Keegan, you've been in software sales since 2019?
Yeah, so just going on a little bit over 5 years.
Okay, tell the audience a little bit about kind of where you started and where you're at now. He's at a really cool software that I was just telling him about that I'm familiar with called Warmly, and a lot of our reps use their free version, and they've got a lot of other products that Keegan was telling me about that I think you guys might be interested in. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I started my career like most people in tech as an SDR. And I worked for a small company back then out of Seattle because I'm born and raised in a greater Seattle area up north. So I worked for a tech company called Outreach.io. And back in the day when I was an SDR cold calling, people would think we were calling on behalf of a church because I'd be like, I'm calling on behalf of Outreach. They're like, oh, we already have a great outreach community. I'm like, no, not that outreach, like the software. So I always joke with SDRs that I know now that are doing really well, or sales reps that are doing well at Outreach when I go back to their events. And I always go like, yeah, back in my day, it was like a lot harder to sell because people always confused us with like a church group and no one knew what sequencing was. So we had to educate actually. So the barrier to entry to get a meeting was a lot harder. Right. But that's what I think hardened my sales skills, right? Is when you're selling a platform that not everyone knows about. Like when I was at Outreach, we were under 400 employees, under 100 million AR. We were like 350. And so we were known, well in the Seattle area, but we didn't go international right away. Like when I was there, we were just building our London office and building out the Tampa office for East Coast coverage, right? And to see that growth from 300 to 1,000 and getting to 100 million AR, like you just learn a ton of great things and things to learn from, not to repeat.
Sure.
But the best thing of that is going from selling a brand that no one knows to selling a brand that's like people start to recognize, because it just hardens your sales skills. You have to just can't drop the name of the brand that you work for and people are like, oh yeah, I've heard of you. It's like, what do you do? Yes, you have to educate, higher barrier to entry to get that meeting. So that helped a lot, which then got me ready to jump into the mid-market space at DoorDash. So that's what brought me to Arizona. Is I joined the DoorDash team for the corporate segment. They were building out a brand new segment for the DoorDash for business. And our primary targets were people with as little as 150 employees in office to 500. Well, week 1, COVID hits.
Whoa.
So we're all remote, and we had to sell a product that they were still basically building and changing. So that hardened my skills for another side of sales that I wasn't prepared for, which was selling a product that was evolving and changing. So it wasn't completely finished yet.
Sure.
Right? So you're having to sell what you have and then what you're going to be building out for the future. Right? Kind of like selling the dream. And that was exciting because I closed a couple Amazon factories, where they had, accounts for 70 to 90,000. So that was exciting.
Wow.
Being able to do that. And then I actually helped build out their Outreach.io sequences and program with the sales ops team, which prepared me for that scalability suite of knowing how to scale things from a rep looking into the leadership side and now looking from the leadership out to the rep side. I go back and say the biggest thing I learned was that moment of how to build that out. And then I went into consulting, which then led to basically being a early sales leader for startups. So I always tell people I'm anywhere between I'm an executive now between Series A to Series C is kind of my niche. And that's why I'm at Warmly. We're Series A and we're kicking butt.
Yeah. Wow. That's quite the experience. I was curious of how you got to Scottsdale. So that was all right. You're from Washington, which is a world different than Scottsdale.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Wazoo people down here though.
That's so yes, I'm a Wazoo Coug.
I saw that you went there and
go Cougs, baby.
I was like, all right, I see a lot of those license plates in Arizona, so you're definitely not alone from the Washington crowd. But like, what keeps you in Scottsdale? Because you guys are remote right now, warmly, right?
Yeah. Actually, so I've been from Washington to SoCal. I did a stint living in SoCal when I was in office, and then I was an account executive for actually enterprise fleet management. So I went from startup to conglomerate.
Yeah.
Enterprise fleet management. So I was selling their B2B car financing as a closer. I test piloted outreach there, actually. I had a really good relationship with outreach when I still do, to where I have brought an outreach to about 12 orgs at this point.
Yeah, you're a power user, bro. You're you're what we call a champion.
Champion, exactly.
Yeah.
But I got to test that out, which helped my sales skills when I was an AE. But then when COVID hit, the pivot happened, and they're like, DoorDash was like, come work for us. So I did, right? 'Cause, everyone's connected in the tech community more than you think. Always remember that.
Definitely.
People are very connect. We were just talking about how many people that, our connections, how they've crossed paths and how we know a lot of mutual people, especially at the leadership level. And so SaaS is very tight. And so I was able to go from SoCal to Arizona because at that time DoorDash was like, well, we're in office. And I was like, yeah, SoCal's expensive. Get me to Arizona. I'm like, it's just as great as weather, but half the cost.
True.
But when I moved here, I was like, oh, this is great. I like it. It's a little hot in the summer. Well, I thought, well, why don't I go try this Texas thing? I kind of have like the cowboy lifestyle. I kind of like the outdoors, the wilderness, the southern hospitality. Too flat for me. I'm definitely a mountain cowboy. I definitely like the mountains. I like the cold and the warmth. So I flipped a house. So I invest and flip houses on the side.
In Scottsdale?
In Texas.
Wow.
So I flipped a house, a rental, Airbnb'd it, did Furnish Finder. Now I've got a deal with this guy that does arbitrage. So I got him under a 2-year lease. He's Airbnb my house. I'm getting like 40% above the market rate in rent. So it's great. And then I'll sell that house for, I think it's grown at this point close to 100K in equity for only owning it for 3 years. So I'll sell that, and then I'll probably buy like a duplex or a triplex with that.
Another one in Texas?
At that point, I would like to probably see if I could do something more up north in Arizona. Scottsdale is very expensive right now, but as you go up more north, there is opportunity. So I would like to keep it more local. Is something I've learned is if you're going to invest in real estate while having other full-time jobs that are demanding, make sure you have your portfolio closer to you.
Okay, because you have to go out to Texas to do these things?
I have to go out to Texas, and if there's any issue, right, or like, you have to go find contractors and then more contractors to review certain things because you can't be there to just drive up an hour to check on it. You have to hire someone to always check on it. People will say, get a property manager. I'll be like, yeah, great. Like, it's my first house. I'm working on my second. Like, if I had 5 or 6, you bet.
Sure.
But you got to be lean when you're bootstrapping. I don't have all this funding for the housing investments. It's just something I'm jumping into. But that was my 9 to 10 month stint in Texas. It was cool, but you know what I missed? Arizona.
Wow.
I missed the excitement and the events that we had. You could literally go to Sedona in an hour and a half, hour 45, and just relax and just like get all the detox away from work, busy life, everything. You have so many healthier choices of food here, and I think in Arizona, and a lot more. I want to say like healthy gym lifestyle, like
definitely
things here, and then golf. Who can say like we have some of the best golf?
I got something for you. I was gonna give it at the end, but you mentioned something where I'm like, all right, now I gotta give this to you. So this is a Pro V1 sell that SaaS golf ball.
No way.
Yeah.
If this ever goes in the water, I'm gonna go jump in after it.
Yeah. It's
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
I give it to every guest. It's the official sell that SaaS.
You know what's funny? I'm going golfing with my buddies this Saturday. So I'm gonna whip this out and say, hey, check out the podcast coming out, y'all.
Yeah, definitely. So just hold on to that. You know, you can use it at your next golf outing. We'll have to golf soon. I'm
not great, but
it's okay. Me and 3 buddies who are all in software sales. Actually, me and 2 buddies. So we need a 4th. So
I'm down.
So we've been playing with a random, or we've been getting lucky with just going us 3. I'm in lessons now.
Okay. Finally,
for my putting. It was pretty rough for a while. I would be able to, hit it well and chip decent, but when I get on there, I was, 3, 4 putting. Like I was just destroying my score. So I was like, I got to get a coach.
I might have accidentally stepped into a coach. The girl I'm currently going out with is they hire her for tournaments.
Really?
To play.
She's legit, huh?
Like, not like scratch golfer legit, but like pretty good to where she's like, oh yeah, like I got a bunch of Oakley stuff for like when they had us play at this tournament, like that Oakley was sponsoring, or like, oh, they needed a photo shoot of people that actually like golfed. And so I was just like, well, if they needed like a comedy TikTok of like having someone slice into the water, I'm the guy.
Would you ever wear your cowboy hat to the golf course?
I have not, but I have wore some outrageous outfits. From the jumpsuits to, I'm a big Bad Birdie, like
Oh, the
loyal
best.
to the brand.
Best.
I got about 15 shirts,
Love
and
it.
now I'm like dipping into the pants that they have, the shorts. Amazing. My team actually for my birthday, all chipped in to buy me like $150 worth of Bad Birdie, and so they just know like that's my go-to. So it's like software cowboy out in the streets, but on the golf course, it's definitely like you would think I'm sponsored by Bad Birdie until you see me, hit the golf ball. Like, there's no way.
I think golf's a humbling sport where
Yeah.
you think, all right, I got this one. Man, I crushed those last 4 holes. I'm a G. And then you're like, how did I just slice that into the lake?
You could just kind of like tie it back to SaaS. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to be that person that ties
Yeah,
their
right.
real life work to their real life to work.
There's always those LinkedIn guys. I love them. I mean,
Yeah.
I have a lot of love for those LinkedIn guys because I actually am friends with them. But I do think sometimes a lot of people will rip on them because they're like, I was at the golf course and it brought back a memory of, when I was in software sales and it's just like quoted. And I'm like, yeah, like you're definitely like kind of in a way making sense here, but let's just let golf
You're a
be
chip
golf.
away from hitting your goal.
Yeah, you're a chip away from hitting your.
I'd be like, when I'm on the golf course, I'm smoking a cigar, I'm drinking a beer with the boys, I'm having fun. And you know what? If we're hitting in the hundreds, all I ask is, did we have a good time? And did anyone disrupt my work by calling, or my fun by calling me about work? If that's a no and I had fun, it was a great day on the course.
It's
'Cause
always
quality time with your friends. Like you just said, we're all busy people. And so that's the quality time to hang out with your friends or family. Like my dad comes and visits. That's our bonding sport is golf. Right. And so I laugh when people tie it to work. Cause like, that's the last thing I'm thinking about. And I always tell for new sellers listening to this, I'm an executive. I go out and golf with a bunch of executives. Here's a mindset shift. We all do the same thing that you do. We all eat cheeseburgers and drink the same beer, probably do the same hobbies, watch the same sports team as you do. The only difference is we've stuck around long enough at the company and have had years of experience to get to a decision-making point. But at the end of the day, we're all people.
Right.
And so you'd actually be interested, interested to know we have a lot of the same hobbies and like a lot of the same activities that you probably do. So always reference that when you're reaching out.
Definitely. I think a lot of people that listen to my podcast, I've gotten some demographic data from Spotify and from my TikTok, and I'm not surprised. It's the biggest age range that listens is we have 18 to 25 is a big bulk, and then 25 to 35 is like the next, and outside of that, there's really not many people listening. So it is a lot of young professionals that are listening to this podcast. And I think I get a lot of messages from SDRs. Okay, how do I excel in my SDR role? But then I get a lot of messages from AEs. Hey, listen to this. Sounded like it was a good fit. But I don't get as many executives that perhaps listen to the podcast. Maybe they do, and they're just kind of in the shadows. But I think for you, like if someone's listening, and this just kind of brought me to this question. If someone's listening and they're thinking, all right, I'm an SDR, I'm an AE. One day I want to be in head of revenue position like yourself or a CRO. Like, what is that process? Did you just one day say, I wanted to do this, or did it kind of just happen as you started gaining your experience?
Yeah, I've been one of those people. Don't get me wrong. I've looked for leadership opportunities, but I've also had a lot of leadership opportunities fall in my lap. I would actually go back to when I was at college. I had people say like, oh, you should sit on this, board for Greek Week, which is a huge fundraising. And I took it to heart when someone brought that up, and we broke records for raising the most money for the community. And then we did it again when I was the director of the board the following year, right? Because I got appointed to that. So like that was a leadership opportunity that just kind of like someone came to me and approached it. Same thing when I did executive student leadership. I was on the ASWSU, so the student body on the executive branch. And I ended up actually doing a couple projects that impacted like the cleanliness of the parks and recreation, so that way it could be open year round for students. And we also, reduced like unnecessary fees. So the next year it was less expensive for students to attend. And I just, again, that one was stumbled upon. So I tell people, if you want to get in leadership, there's two things that could happen for you. You're going to go pursue it, and you're going to write that down like that's your goal. Again, dreams with no plan are just a dream, right? So you actually have to like write down. Sorry, a plan that's not written down is just a dream. That's the saying. And so you actually have to have like a goal written down in mind of what you want to achieve. And there's two ways that you're going to get into leadership. It's either going to fall upon you because you're a natural leader. There are people that we know that you just naturally look up to, right? There's going to be that natural leading ability that you're going to be great at what you do. And you're going to find that you're already just coaching people and showing the path, and you're going to land it that way. Or two, you need to set out, a plan to grow in other areas to be ready to be a leader. So I actually tell that to the teams that I manage. Are you naturally a born leader? Or are you someone that has to grow into a leadership? And you can be a very successful leader either way. Mm-hmm. But what I tell people, and I tell this to my reps that just got promoted actually, they were doing the role that they wanted to get promoted into 2 months before they got the role.
Yeah.
So I tell people, do the role you want, not the role you have, right? Do the work ahead of time. So when I was an SDR and I wanted to start training the other SDRs, I was like starting to share tips and tricks every week at what was working for me. So I, had to stand out by having outstanding statistics, being one of the top performing SDRs at Outreach. And then I would share that with the team. And then some people then would turn into shadowing me, which then led to the director being like, hey, we have the London team coming in. Do you want to train the London team? Like help with us on that? Can they all shadow you? And he picked me and one other gentleman named Kyle, who's absolute stud AE right now. And that's kind of how we got into like the SDR leadership side of things. And then when I became an AE, I started closing a ton of deals above ramp. And then when I was fully off ramp, still was on the leaderboard as top 3. I was the youngest AE, by the way. Don't let age hold you back. Definitely I was 24 not. And I was competing against people that were 30 to 40. And I was number 3 out of 15 sellers. Right. And so that's when they would be like, hey, I noticed you don't have as many calendar blocks as me. Like they would start to look at you and they'd be like, hey, like I noticed your calendar doesn't have this. Like, what are you doing differently? And I would show them instead of just tell them, oh, I lean into automation, right? Most people are like, oh, I do this. The difference is like telling them and then showing them that extra couple steps is that going into leadership. And that's kind of what led to it. Every manager that I've ever promoted or every, like I should say rep to manager that I've promoted, I always tell them like, show me why you'd be a good leader. And then I'll have to make you a leader because people are going to follow. So that's my advice.
That's fantastic. Keegan and I before the show were talking about how different types of software can actually. You mentioned the age thing. It's age is irrelevant, especially in today's world of software sales, where it's so always changing. Where you have to be good at video, right? 20 years ago, it was cold call. There wasn't sequences 20 years ago. There wasn't video prospecting. There wasn't intent data. There's like so many things that sellers have now that sometimes it can almost be their downfalls.
It's almost overwhelming.
So it is over. Sometimes sellers can just rely too much on the technology and they're kind of like, well, this will do my job for me, but really it's not supposed to do that. You're supposed to be, helping you do the basics, but not replace the basics like cold calls, emails, stuff like that. But, we were talking earlier about how certain industries, not everyone's going to be successful. And so like I sell like influencer marketing software and you have perhaps a guy who's in his 50s, you know what I mean? Who's been as SaaS AE for over 3 decades. And you're thinking, you're 25 years old, you're thinking to yourself, oh, there's no way I can compete against that. But it's changed now. It's no longer age and experience. It's how quickly can you adapt to the new trends of software sales. And influencer marketing, you're talking to people who, influencer marketing changes every day. The trend on TikTok, the trend on YouTube, the thing that worked 2 years ago is no longer working. Like 10 years ago was affiliate marketing. Like it was just people who did those teas. I don't know if you saw like those teas they would sell on Instagram. They would be like a fit tea person and they'd have like a discount code. And it was just like they post a picture flexing. Like that was what drove the needle. Now if someone sees that, they're like, oh, that's cheesy. That's what the heck. Now what works is a day in the life. Okay, so I'm going to take the product or I'm going to take the software and show you how I use it in a interactive 30 to 60 second reel, which takes a lot more work, a lot more creativity. And brands are like, how do we find these people? And as a sales rep, if you don't understand what's working in your industry today,
Correct.
You have to be passionate about it. It doesn't matter how many years of experience, it doesn't matter how old you are, you're not going to do as well as the person that can look at it at face value and say, this is the reality of the industry. I'm going to do everything I can to learn it and be invested in it, and you'll crush the competition.
Absolutely. I think there's two things to what you said on that. I think the rate of change, right? One is the rate of change is completely different from even 10 years ago. Rate of change, if you're looking at a graph, was pretty linear. Nowadays, it's exponential.
Right.
Like with technology and AI, the rate of change is exponential. So just know, like, you can either adapt and be part of that change and ride those waves and you'll win, or you can be adverse to it and be like, like, that's not going to affect our industry, or like, we don't need to be like, as a rep or as a leader, like, we don't need to be making those changes, and you might get caught in the storm. So I always tell people the rate of change is a benefit if you learn and adapt and jump on it, right? So that goes back to where people talk about, I just got asked I was doing a panel live in person. We had like 200 sellers in there, and it was me, the VP of Zenny, and the head of sales at Gong.
Wow.
I was the small fish there for sure. But we were all talking about different aspects of leading revenue teams in 2024 and looking ahead. And someone from Adobe asked the question that was on everyone's mind is AI going to replace sales? Warmly is an AI tool, right? We are doing AI prospecting, basically, like what an SDR would do. And so I tell them, I said, AI is not going to replace people. We've seen those emails from AI. They're getting better, but you can like spot it. Right? AI is not going to replace sales reps. It's going to amplify you. What it's going to replace, and this is just AI in general, right? It's going to replace headcount, though. What that means is when I used to build out teams or be part of teams, it was build to 20 SDRs or 30 SDRs to get to X revenue goal, right? By a couple million. You're probably going to be able to do that now with 10 or less than 10 because of AI. And that goes with the rate of change example I'm trying to talk about. Like, I was just trying to give a story that ties to the rate of change. Things are changing ever so fastly, so you can jump on it and you'll ride that wave and you'll win, or you'll get caught in the storm. And so that's something I want to tell young sellers is like, be part of that rate of change, which leads to the next part we talked about is age, right? You're right. Like, people get intimidated. I'll tell you what, I just promoted a guy to be an ISR, which is basically an SMB AE. They don't get fed by the BDR team. They're inbound and self-source.
Full cycle.
Yeah, full cycle essentially, right? But for the smaller deals, if they're bigger deals, they'll pass them on. And that's where the future's heading. I get
that's what our CRO said.
I get so many big time revenue leaders that it's just an honor to like talk to them for even like 15 minutes, and they're picking my brain about this ISR thing. And we used to actually have it at Outreach. But like, that's where they're heading. These big tech companies are like, it makes sense to have a little bit of a coverage from like a smaller SDR team, but the rest of them need to be ISRs. It just makes sense. And what I was going to get at is this ISR, this guy that's been closing, is 24 years old. And to be a closer at 24 in SaaS was like such a foreign concept a couple years ago. Like 6-7 years ago, they were like, no, you have to be selling for decades. When SaaS was like still a newer concept, this young stud came in, crushed it on sales development. I had no choice but, again, I always say, do so well, I have no choice but to promote you. That's what leaders want to hear. And then he comes in, he's on ramp. His quota is supposed to be 25. He closes 64,000. So if someone was to like look from the outside be like, and say, well, like, you need experience, age of wisdom, and years to get to closing in the SaaS environment, I'd be like, bullshit. Sorry, BS. I'd be like, no, because guess what? If you have the tenacity, right, and you're evolving to the ever so changing rate of change and riding that wave, right, and you're a hustler and you're going to put in the work and you're going to learn, you're going to crush it. It doesn't matter your age, right? And that's where I want to tell sellers today is the day of saying you have to have 30 years or 10 years plus of experience, right? It's a limiting mindset. Don't fall into that trap. There is a difference, though, I will say, between being an SMB seller and like a veteran seller and then an enterprise seller, right? But to just start closing, I think a lot of sellers are going to get to that point where we're changing in business, especially, SaaS B2B. We're always kind of the frontier of change, right? We're the ones that do the most change before all the industries usually do, right? We're the most innovative. Definitely. I think you're going to see younger closers going into probably like 3 to 6 months of doing top of funnel and then start moving into the top of funnel and closing the smaller deals like an ISR, and then that's going to be the motion, which is going to be better for sellers.
Man, I'm fired up right now. Yeah. Like, you got me fired up because I think it's so true where I think SaaS sellers. You're interesting, dude, because I saw that you started in SaaS, whereas I was doing logistics. I was in a door-to-door staffing in downtown Chicago. So I did all these things, and I'm telling you, man, you get to a SaaS company, it's like, let's level up your sales by a infinity amount, because the other industries are so far behind. It's banging out the phone, which is great, but they're missing out on all of these things like, video prospecting, buyer intent, being able to send really personalized emails with the help of AI. Like, I think software sales is the most innovative selling industry. And that's why so many people that I follow are like, yeah, if I were to choose anything, it'd only be SaaS sales. And that's the same way I am. I don't see myself going to any other industry other than software. And it's also so sticky. You mentioned at the beginning, it's so sticky. You start having people say, oh, I know him at that person. I know her at that company. Mm-hmm. They'd be great for this role. Or my buddy, I won't mention his name, but my buddy's like, hey, he's at a company. He got a call. They said, hey, we heard about you through X, Y, and Z. We're about to get a huge funding round. We know you're the guy to grow our GTM motion. Mm-hmm. And like he was talking to me yesterday. He's like, dude, what should I do? And I was like, you got to take the call, number one. But those type of things happen in software sales because you're kind of known in the industry. And that would kind of lead me to one of my questions for you is like about this personal brand, right? Mm. So you and I both have pretty decent LinkedIn followings. I see you always post a lot of great shout outs about your team. So that's a great leader, giving your team some love on LinkedIn. And I think as an individual rep, I love it when my VP of sales calls me and says, you're doing a great job. Just wanted to just give you a call, let you know that. So that's great on you. But, where do you see this personal brand going for yourself and for B2B sellers?
Yeah. I mean, my personal brand is I always kind of tell people I'm like a no fluff, no BS kind of leader. Like, I'm not going to talk about something that I haven't either done myself or, accomplished with my team. But I'm also not going to hide when we fail. Like, there are some posts if you dig where I'm like, we learned from this and we pivoted to this, right? Because I think when you're transparent, that's something that the company Warmly is doing more on LinkedIn, is being transparent and authentic. You're building a strong relationship with that audience that, we're also targeting because we sell to that audience. So I think my personal brand will continue to be more of like fact-based, like tips and tricks and motivation. It's just kind of like, I think it's not any different than who I am as a person. Like, I am known as the friend that is very motivational, gets people fired up, right? Is that friend that will call you out if you're doing something out of place and will give you the truth, but then it's two-way street. Mm-hmm. And that's what I love about my team. It's like, I'm actually still selling with them, right? I'm getting feedback from my AEs of what they want better. Same with the SDRs on messaging. Like, I love it. I had an SDR come to me the other day and it's like, this sequence sucks. Like, they didn't say it like that, but like they were getting at like, this sequence is just not that great. We don't feel confident in it. And I said, you know what? If you don't feel confident in it, I let you down. You write the A/B testing of the templates you want. We'll turn it on right away. And I'm like, when you exceed the performance of my templates and it does well, not only are you going to get your commission obviously from that, I'm going to give you a gift card because you went and solved a problem that I didn't see, but that you saw, right? And so like, that's where my brand's going to be, is really telling how it is on the journey of growing a company, giving career tips of how to break into it. Like, I'm 27. This is my second.
Oh, you're same age as me.
Yeah, this is my second time leading a team as an executive level. I've been in management for 4 years now. I've owned a business that as a consulting firm that has crossed six figures when I was 25, right? I own property and I'm trying to dabble into more. How many people can say they do that at 27? There are people though out there, I just want to say, that have done it before 27. So my point is, I want to share that journey from, hey, young, breaking down the barriers of like what you can and can't do, to when I'm 40, I want to have that monologue, that story of my brand of like saying, here's what I was thinking when I was at this age and this leadership to where I'm to middle to where I'm now. Looking back, it'd be a cool story to tell. And I want it to be a resource for reps to maybe eventually one day be like, yeah, you could kind of tell that story in a book. I wouldn't write it. I'd pay someone to write it. But like, if someone could take all those helpful and tips of posts that I make, that can actually help reps get better. So you'll see for me, and there's nothing against this, I have friends that talk about life outside of work on LinkedIn, and like the work-life balance. I talk a little bit about work-life balance, but like they talk about like feeling good and the emotions, right, of work and life. And there's nothing wrong with that. My brand though is more tied to,
sure, here's
the job that's at hand. Here's a way most people do it. Here's a way you can actually exceed and do
Sure.
it better. So I want to be known as the person that you can go follow on LinkedIn and say, once a week, this guy's going to drop some facts that are like just known that I could actually take and use myself as a rep or as a leader. And so I think that's where it's going to grow. And then for people that are building brands, you do a perfect example of building a brand that ties to what you do.
Thanks.
Like we were talking before we started this podcast of like, you're living every day what you sell because you're a brand, you have your own brand, you're an influencer. And I think that's what it's going to be is I think a lot of companies are hiring people to build brands, but they're going to find you have to hire the right person that's their brand matches what your company's brand wants to be. So that's the next era we're going to be going into. And I've had people actually approach me to be like an ambassador or someone like an influencer for the company. And I'm just like, you wouldn't like my brand. I'm a little rough around the edges. I say the facts. It's not always like, as kind-hearted or soft, not kind-hearted. It's not as soft or gentle when I say it.
Sure.
So that might not get along with your company's mission. And that's okay because my brand's not for everybody. And I think people need to realize that as they continue to grow.
That's a great mindset is like your brand's not for everybody. When we talked about how people do post a lot about outside of stuff of work, that's their brand.
Yeah. And that's great. I get motivation from those people.
Likewise, that's their brand. Occasionally I'll share some stuff like my fitness stuff that I'm doing occasionally. But most of it is I basically just clip videos from my podcast or from my TikTok and say, hey, here's a piece of value in less than 60 seconds. Feel free to watch it. Feel free not to. But every day people can expect, likely Will's going to post a video about something related to software sales that maybe I can get value from. Like that's what my brand is. And I truly think the future of B2B influencer marketing and LinkedIn influencer marketing is video. I think if you can understand how to create a really great video and talk to the camera and be able to not only talk to the camera, but give people a little bit of insight of who you are and what we're doing right now. This. And so I think that's the beauty of it. If you put yourself in the listener's seat, some of my favorite podcasts are Ryan Pineda's Wealthy Way podcast or Bedros Keuilian's podcast. I don't know if you know either of those guys, but they're pretty good podcasts. And when you listen to them, you feel like you know them so much better. And you want to research their companies. You want to see if there's products that you can buy because you feel like you really know them. And I think that leads me to my question for you is, you have this personal brand. I mean, I don't think it's going to slow down. I think you're going to continue to see this upward trend of growth for your page. I think you're unique. The software cowboy thing, it's unique and you're real and you're authentic about it. So how much of that do you think is going to play into inbound leads coming to you for Warmly or for whatever's next?
I actually have a story on that too. So I had my brand coming into Warmly and we were building out the sales org. Again, I came in when as the first person to start selling with the CEO and building out the sales org, right? We've got a team about 10 now and we'll probably scale that by the end of the year, close to 15. Not bad for, the first full year of building out a sales team. As long as we keep exceeding goals, which we are. But one of the things I challenged my CEO on is I was like, we got to build a brand. He's like, well, yeah, you have a brand. And he's like, so what do you mean? And I was like, no, we all need to leverage the brand. I go, you are the CEO. I'm like, I can't just be the one face of the company that people see on LinkedIn. They got to see the actual founders. That resonates with people. So we had this talk because he really wanted to be on the sales floor. And I was like, you are a CEO. You brought me in to do the sales part and lead the team on that. That takes trust and you have to establish that relationship. Well, we were 6 months in and I was like, I think the best value you can bring, my CEO is Max. I said, Max, I think the best value you can bring is being that face of the company, telling that story, building that brand and authenticity that's going to drive people in. And then I can talk about the sales tips, building out a team, and then how sales teams could leverage Warmly. So I come in as the brand builder on the sales side. You come in as the founder that talks about everything from building a company, raising funding, the hardships and the highs and the lows. And then again, plugging some ways that Warmly is amazing for sales teams, right? But you've got to be the face of it. And then we got the other co-founder, Alan, who leads marketing, to do another co-founding side of the brand, but more towards marketing. Well, here's the results. We looked at our inbound demo requests, and our inbound demo requests went from 10 to 240 per month between 3 sellers.
That's crazy.
Crazy, right?
Dude.
Now, so that the team's bigger now, but that's how the growth was over the last like 4 months. Well, we have a way of tracking the form where you heard from us. Our number 2 source of inbound is LinkedIn.
Dude, that's
almost
awesome.
half of the inbound came from LinkedIn. And guess where they came from? We run no ads. We run no SEO. We have no like expenses when it comes to ads, SEO, anything when it comes to promoting your digital brand other than our LinkedIn and being authentic with our posts and our story. And my CEO went from, I think he had like 12,000, like, you know, he's a scout for Sequoia. He's been a founder, like he's got a good following, but he went from 12,000 in less than 6 months to over 20,000.
Wow.
I grew from 5,000 to I'm just about to hit 9,000.
Yeah.
Our marketer is at like 21,000. And again, this is just within 6 months of us projecting the brand. And now we've actually started a committee. We're calling it the Revenue Rebels at Warmly. And we've hired an SDR with an outstanding brand. She's amazing. We have an AE. Her name is now the Khaleesi of sales.
Love it.
She's got like the light blonde, white hair, right? Or I guess that's light blonde. But she's one of our top AEs. She absolutely kills it. She's sharing the AE perspective, kind of like you do, right? And giving those tips. And guess what's happening? Our inbound now is trickling from multiple different brand builders within the company. And we're able to actually drive more demand, right? Create that demand for Warmly with having less people do outbound. We still have an outbound team that's killing it, but our inbound is covered without ever having to actually dump any funding or advertising spend into it.
Yeah, any company who is like, oh, should I do influencer marketing? Should I have my employees promote our brand across socials and be authentic with their story? That's like proof right there. And you guys are ahead of the curve. Yeah. Like you just are.
Well, the results show it too. Like we did I'll do this in 2 ways. We did 12,000 MRR above goal. So that's an additional 140,000 more than what we needed to this past quarter because of how well our inbound's doing from our brands that we're building, the company. So that's a lot of happy AEs. That's a lot of happy SDRs because the commissions everyone's exceeding quota. And, you know, I'm a happy revenue leader and the co-founders and the board's happy. And again, they asked the same question of like, how are you guys doing this? And we're like, we're seeing where the future's going.
Oh yeah. You're ahead of it. And like, that's why I always put as a seller, I always put myself in the buyer's shoes. I'm like, what does your buyer see? And in this case, put yourself in the shoes of a consumer of your favorite podcast or of your favorite influencer. You know how that works. You follow them, you love them, you think that you're invested in their kind of story and their life. And before you know it, you're saying, you know, what are they selling? I want to check out what they're selling. You go through it, and because you know them and you think, oh, wow, this product actually could be helpful for you, I'm going to reach out. So you're turning on this inbound engine that is really not that hard to turn on. It's hard to be consistent and it's hard to be authentic in your content. That part is challenging. But I think you guys have a great product. Grin has a great product. It's important for people like Gong does it really well.
Oh, I think Gong, we can say, was one of the godfathers of building a brand.
They're way ahead. They're way ahead of that. They're way ahead of, you know, people like, and I actually don't even know these guys, but like I just see them all over LinkedIn. Brian LaManna, JC Pollard. There's a couple SDRs I follow. This, you know, talks about their kind of journey. There's a guy named Michael Kenny. Michael's been a longtime follower of mine. We've never connected, but you know, he's constantly liking my stuff and I'm constantly looking at his stuff. He's always posting about some of his challenges. There's a guy you might know, Jordan Friedman from Outreach. From Outreach. Again, all these people are just posting about their daily lives of what they're up to in their SDR, AE role, as you know, manager role, founder role, whatever it might be. And then they're also, what's behind them is this amazing product. And all those products I mentioned, Warmly, Outreach, Gong, there's a couple others I'm probably missing. They're great tech. I've used personally all of them, never used Warmly, but like have heard only fantastic things. Grin, we're great software. Like I can look at someone directly in the eyes and say, if you want to do influencer marketing, you got to use Grin. Like and ask anyone in the industry, they're going to tell you, use Grin. It's the best influencer marketing platform out there. And I can confidently say that because the tech is that good. And all the techs I just mentioned are that good. So when you're posting about your brand, you're just helping turn on this engine for people actually to get what they need from your software, because it's not like you're promoting something that's not beneficial. No, it's really beneficial to your sales team, and it's gonna change the way that they do sales. So I love that, dude. And I don't think your brand's gonna slow down. I think you're gonna see not only more people reach out to you to do individual work as a influencer. I think you're gonna start to see that a lot more of software companies saying, because software companies are coming to Grin wanting our software to use influencers like yourself.
Correct.
So they're seeing, okay, Keegan here, unique brand, been in software for a long time, matches. How can we get a software that he can promote? And they'll start paying you. You can make a decent side income from these deals if you wanted to take them. And then the benefit, okay, let's say you don't want to do any brand deals. You're still getting inbound leads for people wanting to work with Warmly.
Correct. And I tell people too, like, again, the company that you're going to represent has to match your brand, right? So me, I'd be great for like sales and marketing accelerator tech, like, because that's my background is selling either MarTech, like SMS and email, like ESPs for e-commerce SaaS, or, selling sales tools like Outreach, right? And so forth. And then Warmly, which is a sales accelerating tool. So basically that would be where I would say, like, those are the companies that would, like, Senspark. I'm an advisor for Senspark. I use it every single day.
Tell us about Senspark. I want to know about it because I am seeing so many people post about it, but like, what is it?
So I used to actually be a huge advocate of BombBomb, which was one of the earlier video platforms.
Yeah.
Zoe, that's how Zoe Hartsfield, she's another big name on LinkedIn. She's amazing. We got to know each other when we were BDRs. So I taught her like sequencing tips and tricks with Outreach because they were using Outreach there. And then in return, she would teach me some video making hacks, and it worked. Like, we both were quota crushers, and it kind of like helped elevate our career growth. Well, I was a big, long time fan of that. Then I switched to this platform called, Covideo. And then I was going to Warmly. I was going to go buy the same platform. And my CEO goes, well, I actually know another video platform that you should just check out. It's your choice. Like, he's awesome. He's just like, he's letting, me make the decision for my team. But he's like, I just want to have you check it out. It's the best thing he ever did, because I went and checked out Senspark, and it does everything I love about all these other platforms, but more. It actually incorporates AI. So when I used to teach people to make videos, like personalized videos that would convert at 30% or more, it was, you go on their LinkedIn and you scroll their profile, you go on their website and you scroll, right? And you say like, hey, Alpha Lead, I'm on your site. Like, this is actually how one of my reps broke into Alpha Lead, one of the companies. Like Alpha Lead, the athletic
I
wear.
know Christian Guzman, bro.
The
man.
I said, like, make a video, go on their site and talk about like how they should be using like SMS or something like that, right? And that's how, like, we got on the BDR side. That's how we got the opportunity created, was like video and email and other touch points. But that was manual. Now Senspark can just pull their domain from their email when you import a list that you're targeting, like of like, let's say 500 people, and it will actually mimic their website with your video in the corner. Like, it mimics the website that they're on. It could scroll, and now it can mimic and clone your voice. So if I say like, hey, Watermelon, it's Keegan here at Warmly, gonna introduce you this, it'll say, hey, Kyle, hey, Will, hey, Kathleen, and it'll show their website like as that quick introduction, and it's like the clickbait. Once they click it, then it's back to the normal video.
Yeah.
And it's just, you're just personalizing at scale. So it does that, and it's easier to embed in multiple platforms. I found, like, they have coding for like your marketing email software all the way down to Outreach, right? Very specific, and the tracking for that is impeccable. And like, as a leader, like, if we can track very accurately the 100 videos you send out, the 20 people that click, and what their percentage of watch rate is at like a 98% accuracy score, that gives my reps more confident to go after low-hanging fruit and convert at a higher rate. So those are what really won me over, and the price point
I'm gonna
is
have
very
to
affordable.
I'm gonna download it. I've seen so many people talk about it, and I love video. I just did a podcast two episodes ago on video prospecting and how it helped me book 70% of all my meetings as an SDR, and I used Vidyard. and Loom, which are great. But then I've seen Senspark out there, so I was curious. So I just wanted to know.
It's the new innovative tech for video. So definitely happy to put you in contact. It's been fun advising and helping them with their outbound a little bit. They work very closely with Warmly. We're very, very actually like, it's really cool to see like our two companies very close together. But Bethany over there, she's the co-founder. Amazing. So
Yeah.
it's just something I tell reps, like you get a free week, you get like a free trial, try it out. You know, you can always try before you buy in those kind of cases. And if you go all in, you're going to see the results. I've gotten like 4 buddies on it outside of tech. And they're like, dude, I've never had this many email responses. I had to like tell my assistant to work longer hours because we're getting so many emails responses.
Okay. You got me sold.
So that's been huge success. So excited about that.
Nice, man. Okay. Well, I want to kind of close here. I think we're getting close to the time. I want to give you the opportunity to talk about Warmly, talk about what you're up to, where you want the audience to connect with you, and kind of anything that you feel like you might want to share about Warmly or about software sales advice that you can give the audience.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to paint the picture here when it comes to Warmly. When I sold, it was, you know, MQLs from the marketing team and outreach. Here's a couple leads that download a couple white papers. Or it was, here's people that opened your email a couple times and clicked on the links. That's your low-hanging fruit, and go from there. But you still didn't have the complete story. With Warmly, it sits on your website to de-anonymize, which means I know if it's Will from Grin on my site. Like I can see if you're on my website, what company you're representing and where you're coming in from. So Scottsdale, Arizona, let's say, right? Or we can say Mesa, Arizona, since we're in Mesa. And I'll be able to actually see what you interacted with, how long you sat on what pages, and be able to have that contextual data to follow up with. If you're live on the site, I can just chat with you through our chatbot, and I can actually FaceTime you through the site or do the regular chat. And that has a 20% connect rate. Wow. Cold calling today using power dialers, like big fan of Orem here, power dialer. That high of a connect rate is only 5%. However, you're able to get more dials in, right? Which helps. But with Warmly, we're seeing a 20% connect rate when a prospect that's de-anonymized comes on the site, and we can actually chat with them there. So it adds to what I call the omni-channel approach, multiple channels to get someone's attention. We're having huge success there to where our reps actually are focusing more on warm calling than any other channel because it converts at a high rate. But then the last part is we all use sequencing tools. If I'm not able to get you through the chat, right, I know what pages you visited. I can have the AI pair that up with my sequencing tool. We use Outreach. If you use Apollo, Sales Loft, HubSpot, doesn't matter.
Jealous.
It's going to push
Outreach.
it. It's going to push it to sequences. So now the reps are waking up, and Warmly has identified the low-hanging fruit for you as a salesperson, and they're already in the sequences that correspond with how they've been interacting with the website. We're changing the way like people are doing sales because we're taking away the cold. Like it is now warm outbound, right? That's why it's called Warmly. It's because we're identifying the low-hanging fruit coming to your site, and you can either get them through chat or you can get them through AI Prospector, which is basically the conductor saying, because they were on the site, we're going to push them to the sequence you had in Outreach paired up to it. So it's very, very exciting. None of our competitors are doing any of the auto sequencing. That's where we are different. There are competitors that do similar features like a chatbot or de-anonymization, but intent, which is de-anonymization of like people on your site, intent data and de-anonymization is only useful if you have speed to lead. So that's where I'm excited with where we're growing at Warmly. And then that people that want to connect with me, I'm kind of doing what you're doing. And it's bracing the omnichannel approach, building brand. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm on TikTok, giving away sales tips just like yourself. And I think that's where we're ahead of the curve is I tell people to don't just do LinkedIn, do other channels as well. Yeah. Right. That's what you're seeing these big brands, these big folks that have big brands are doing is multiple channels. Right, you have to do different each channel, but you can find me on LinkedIn and TikTok at Keegan Got, the Software Cowboy. If you type in the Software Cowboy, I'll pop up.
That's what you have to do is be unique, and it doesn't have to be TikTok for everyone who's listening. Yeah. I think so. I sell influencer marketing software, so I could tell you where the attention's at right now. It's YouTube and TikTok. So I'd say if you want to get a lot of brand recognition, pick one and start there alongside LinkedIn. Also, what I'm hearing a lot recently is X is getting big. So people are posting a lot of long form videos on X, formerly known as Twitter. So check those platforms out. A lot of the brands I talk to, especially software companies, will come to me and they'll say, hey, we want influencers on LinkedIn, and we want them to also have a presence either on TikTok or YouTube. That's what I'm hearing. So if you're listening to this and you're saying, I want to be a creator, but I also want to be a successful salesperson, check out those 2 channels. Dude, it's been amazing.
This was fun.
I mean, I'm so glad you were able to come out, like, based in Scottsdale. So this was a perfect match. Everyone connect with Keegan on LinkedIn or on TikTok. Give him a follow. I'll be sure to, shout you out, post it in the description and everything so people can come to your page and potentially check out Warmly. So, dude, thank you.
And make sure to subscribe to his channel. This is amazing.
Thank you.
Where else can you get authentic tips from a guy that's selling every day?
Trying my best. All right, everyone. This is episode 8 of the Sell That SaaS podcast. I can't believe it. We're almost at 10 episodes, and the average fail rate for podcasts is like 95% can't get past 10 episodes. So I'm coming for that 10th episode. Thank you, everyone.